Welcome back to Stop Mixing Sense. That is the name of this series. It was my New Year's resolution to start it, and thank you all already so much for watching. Can we all just take a moment to appreciate the whole Kiki Bouba thing? If you haven't watched the first video, I'll link to it in the comments, but basically we have these two shapes, and if you had to choose which one is Kiki and which one is Bouba. Isn't it obvious? And that right there is the basis to my entire approach to mixing. That it really is almost obvious, at least more obvious than a lot of these mixing tutorials that focus on specific plugins would have you believe. But within this obviousness, there is a lot of subjectivity, and that is because we are all filters. What is a filter? If you've been producing for a while, you probably think of a filter as something like this. Which can filter out or boost certain frequencies. There's also a resonance component to filters that makes a really cool sound when you do something like this. But forget about that filter for a second and focus on the filter that is you, yourself. And by the way, I truly believe this. If you have a mouth, you can understand everything you need to understand about mixing, production, synthesizers, all of it. The size of your head, the depth and narrowness of your ear canals, and of course your personal preferences, which are formed by the music you like to listen to, what you grew up with, maybe what age you are, what stage of your life you're in, are all responsible for the reasons you like the songs and the sounds that you like. I, for example, have super teeny ear canals, so teeny that they can't even make custom in-ear monitors for me because they can't fit the wiring that they would need to fit the structure they would have to make for it to fit into my ear. You know, AirPods don't fit me. They will not stay in my ears no matter what I do, no matter what size I try. A lot of earplugs don't even fit in my ear. Even if I scrunch them up and try to get them narrow enough, they pop out and they just kind of rest on my ear. And this is just a theory, but I think that this might be why I am so sensitive to harshness and brightness and sibilance, you know, your S's, your T's, sometimes your K's in a mix. I have literally sent a song to mastering, had them send me back the mastered version, and gone back into the mix and edited the sibilance even further because the added brightness of the mastering, which I liked, made the S's too harsh. There's also a theory that women tend to prefer more bass-heavy mixes, and there are some pretty sexy reasons for this that I will elaborate on in another video. But I think that one reason may be that women generally have smaller ear canals, and this might affect our tolerance for higher frequencies as sound goes into the ear. And by the way, as a general rule with filters and sound sources in general, the smaller or narrower something is usually indicates a higher pitch or frequency. For example, our vocal cords. This is why women generally have higher pitched voices compared to men, and that's because our vocal cords themselves are smaller and thinner, and our larynx, aka the tube inside of our neck that air travels through to produce sound, is narrower. I'm also a vocalogist, which is a field of study combining speech therapy and singing. And the human voice has a lot in common with production and mixing and synthesis, which I will also elaborate on more later, so stay tuned for that. But in conclusion, we are all filters. You know, our eyes are a filter, our ears are a filter, our mouths are a filter. The entire human experience is a filter, which is why this is obviously Kiki and this is obviously Bouba, because we all have mouths. And on top of that, in addition to us being filters ourselves, everything we listen through is a filter, from our professional mixing speakers to our phones and everything in between. And each device falls somewhere along the Kiki Bouba spectrum. And on top of that, every space we listen to music in is a filter, whether you're in your home studio or in your car or in your headphones. And you may have heard other tutorials saying things like, you can't trust your ears unless you're listening in a perfect listening environment. I personally don't believe this, and this is after going down that rabbit hole pretty far. You know, I got SonarWorks software and did a whole sound profile of my room and tuned my speakers to my room, and long story short, I don't use it anymore. You know, if you can listen to your mix on speakers and devices that you normally enjoy listening to music on. This is why your car is a great place to listen to a mix, even if your car speakers are shitty, because you listen to a lot of music in your car. But what I do instead is I mix on my speakers. I have Yamaha HS8s and on 2 different types of mixing headphones, my Audio Technicas and my DT990s, a pair of closed back and a pair of open back headphones. And I go back and forth between those 3 devices while mixing. Then I go listen in my car, and then I listen on my urban ears, which I know boost the bass and just kind of make everything sound a little bit cloudier or more blurry in general because they're not as good headphones. Then I listen on my Bluetooth speaker, my JBL Flip, which is mono, very important. You should always listen to your mix in mono to make sure that nothing important is getting lost. And if I were to place all of these listening devices on a Kiki Bouba spectrum, if you will, it would look something like this. Now, when I first started mixing, I would go from listening device to listening device and just think everything sounded like shit and think I sucked and tell myself I hate myself. Don't worry. Things are always going to sound a little weird when you switch listening devices because your ears have grown accustomed to hearing your song in a certain way. The important thing is not to freak out and just calmly get to know your listening devices. Get to know what you like about them, get to know their shortcomings and where they fall on the Kiki Bouba spectrum. And then do your best to take the average of all of that. The perfect environment doesn't exist. People enjoy music all the time, anywhere, in everyday places and spaces and playback devices. The main thing is you just don't want anything to be uncomfortable and you don't want anything getting lost. So for example, if your mix sounds too harsh on a phone to the point that it almost hurts, then maybe your mix actually is too bright. And on the flip side, if you can't hear the kick drum at all on your phone, you might want to boost some of those higher frequencies of that kick drum so that it comes through no matter what. You know, the age-old piece of advice, or at least relatively age-old, that everything should sound good on a phone is true. When I mixed my first song, She Gets Me, I had 49 different mixes of that one song with the slightest changes on the master bus, making it ever so slightly brighter or ever so slightly darker. Don't do that, because every listening device that you play your song back on is going to be a little bit different. And remember, the most important thing is not the mix, it's the song. Remember that.